Hey everyone, welcome to the Vegan Stew, and I'm Helene, and I'm going to start us off tonight by saying thank you to TerraSeed for being our sponsor this month for Virtual Veg Fest Live, and the fact that you can win some really cool prizes by going to virtualvegfestlive.com and hitting the contest tab, and you can win prize packs from TerraSeed, Hodo Foods, VegKey, Follow Your Heart, Revolution Gelato, Rebel Cheese, Cinnaholic, and Fabulous. And they are also our sponsors, and it's very kind of them to support us to send you really cool prizes every month. So simple as that. It is almost the end of April, so you have a few more days to get into the April contest before we start again in May. A couple of things about this weekend. Dawn has an event in Greenville, South Carolina, called Eat, Drink, Disrupt. And you can go and check that out at urban-eats.com. I think it's urban-eatsllc.com. I think it's urban-eats.com. You can go there, check that out. If you'll be in Greenville, I'll be there. And we'd love to see you there too. Let's see. Really cool topic tonight. What's cool? I don't know. Did I say cool? Really important topic tonight. And that has to do with the hidden cruelties of animal agriculture. And we have our first guest, which is really awesome. Jenny McQueen is here from Canada, and she is going to be part of the Stew Crew tonight talking about this topic. If you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the little box, and that way you become part of the show. And also you can go and to YouTube and you can subscribe and hit the notification button so you know when we go live and you never miss a show. As Marla said before we went live, this is episode 26. So that means we've been doing this for half a year. So let's see, I'm going to bring the crew on. Here we have Kelly from Climate Healers, Kimberly from Did You Bring the Hummus, Marla Rose from veganstreet.com, Sangeeta from Tilted Planet, and our special guest, Jenny McQueen, Roseslaw, and Toronto Animal Safe, and DXC in Toronto, because I looked at your Facebook profile. So, question for all of you, because it's kind of like the new thing of starting the show. I was thinking about our topic, and my thoughts and feelings. Here's Philip. Thanks for having Jenny. He's so excited. And then hi Diane. Thank you again. We really appreciate you watching. I was thinking about when we see videos about animal agriculture, when we see the videos that show what happens to the animals. I can't watch them because it's too difficult for me. It's not that I haven't seen it. I have seen it, but it's absolutely it's preaching to the choir for me. Is it something that you are able to watch still, or is it something like for me it's just I get it. I don't need to see it again.
I can't watch it.
Can't watch it? Yeah. Marla?
Well, I just kind of feel like, I think if my motivation were wavering or I felt less connected to the cause, I might expose myself to it, because it can be really easy to detach sometimes, even for those of us who know. It's like a self-preservation thing sometimes. But in general, I don't think we need to expose ourselves to it if we already know and we're already sensitive to it. Like, I think that we risk burnout if we overdo it,
Kimberly?
I'm kind of both. I watch them sometimes, but I first ask myself, how am I today if I'm going to look at something like that? And if I know that it's going to destroy me in that moment, then I won't. But I have other times where I feel like it is important to be a witness, to be able to speak to it. And, the videos, but also in person. There is an auction in my town that happens once a week. And if I happen to drive past there, I make sure to look and listen and acknowledge the suffering. And it's just like driving down a highway. If a truck goes by, filled with animals, I can't look away.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we started out, Kimberly. You're already crying. Okay, so
Yep.
Kelly.
There's some I absolutely cannot watch. Like Taiji, the dolphin hunt, things like that. I cannot do it. Like, and then but then there's some that I don't want to say it's easier, but like, I can't. And saying Kimberly, like if I see a slaughterhouse truck on the highway, I will absolutely bear witness. We will follow it. We will point. We'll call it out. I'm probably of the same mindset. I just check, how it's going to affect me. Documentaries are increasingly harder to watch. Yeah.
And Jenny?
Yeah, I'm kind of on both sides of this equation. I will actually make videos from inside hellish places, and I will sometimes feel really bad about posting them. There was one that I couldn't post for the longest time because it was really gruesome. I tend to like videos that have calls to action. So if it's something that people can get behind and do something about, like food farming, pig farming, cow farming, you have the power of your plate to actually make a difference, then I think it's really valid to post these videos. Where it's an individual being extremely cruel to an animal, then I myself will choose not to watch, because what can I do about that?
Oh, thank you. So part of that was a good segue into Marla Rose with the news, because there's a topic to highlight about food apartheid.
Yeah, so I have two news topics. One's going to segue into our guest really well, and but the first one is we are missing Ms. Dawn Hilton Williams today because she is getting ready for her big event, which is the Eat, Drink, Disrupt Festival, or is it just Eat, Drink, Disrupt in Greenville, North Carolina? It's
South Carolina.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. You can find out more about it at, I think it's urban, HERBAN -eats.com, something like that. But what was especially important and noteworthy is that there was a big write-up about the festival. By the way, it's almost sold out, so it really doesn't matter if we promote it right now. But what was really important is that the Greenville newspaper published a big story, like the kind of media, PR people pay for, or salivate over, featuring Dawn speaking about what is called food apartheid, which is different in concept than the idea of food deserts, right? Because there is this idea with food apartheid is intentionality of white supremacy that buttresses it and upholds it. So Dawn spoke quite a bit and beautifully in the piece about what she sees as her role as a vegucator and doing tremendous work within these communities to help people reclaim their health, to help people access health that they'd never experienced before. But she has, and so like the event is going to feature primarily BIPOC, Black and Indigenous people of color within the vegan world. She's going to have Dr. Milton Mills. She's going to have Miyoko Shinner. Dawn's going to speak herself. But I thought this was such a great quote that was from the piece. And she said, deserts, this is what Dawn said, deserts are natural. These, meaning food apartheid, are man-made. It is not just the stores. It's addressing, it's addressing systemic inequities and how to get food sovereignty in these communities. So anyway, I just thought that was just such a win to see somebody putting together, just naming what this is. It's not food deserts. It's not just something that naturally occurred. It is systemic, and there are people working to fix it, like Dawn and others throughout the world. So anyway, we're really excited about that. And I don't know, did anyone want to say anything about that news story? Okay. I was just going to really quickly mention that there was a news story today in Veg News about HPAI, which is the highly pathogenic bird influenza, of which H5N1 is part. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, reported that 31 million birds in 29 states have been infected. About, I believe it said, just nearly 30 million have been killed. It's also starting to affect wild bird populations. This is one of the things that we're being told to maybe not feed outdoor birds this spring to try to slow the spread of this very deadly virus. It's also affecting sanctuaries who have rescued birds. The last thing I was going to mention is the crossover to humans is still kind of rare, but as we know now with our pandemic, crossovers happen, and it only has to happen once for it to become catastrophic. So anyway, on that note, on that happy note, unless somebody had something to share about that news story. Yes, Helene.
One of the local sanctuaries, Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge, has all their birds locked up. Well, it's hard to say. They're for their own protection because they don't want any of them to catch this. So a lot of the sanctuaries are needing to have their animals live a different life right now for their own protection so they don't catch this.
Yeah.
And that's just, and it just adds more difficulty because there's more cleanup. There's the socialization. The ducks aren't out in the pond.
Right.
They have to so they don't die from something, like this virus.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's absolutely awful because they've gone to sanctuary only to be in a position where thankfully they're in sanctuary. And you're right, Marla. If you have bird feeders, you want to take them down right now because of the spread of this into the wild birds, and we don't want to see I don't want there to be any harm for the wild birds in the neighborhood. It's so sweet to see them at your bird feeders, but right now that probably is worse for them than they'll. Believe me, the birds will be okay food wise, even without the feeders.
That's true.
They are all right. It's just it's like score if you have food out, but they're not going to die from starvation, so you don't have to worry about that.
That's
so those
true.
are really good things to bring up. I see Jenny's pen.
Yeah, it's mostly the other way around. It's the wild birds, such as Canada geese, who are flying over the countryside, who actually have this virus that workers are stepping on and then taking inside. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And here in Canada, it's becoming rampant in Canada too. And there was just a notice from our ministry that looks after this saying, please stop buying eggs from backyard breeders. Which then begs the question, why are they asking people to do that? They're kind of scared that even people buying eggs could take the virus and transmit it.
Right. Well, in some ways, it really doesn't matter who's spreading it as much as the fact that this is a perfect storm when you have these densely populated, if somebody's coming in from outdoors with this on them, it doesn't matter if it came from Canada goose or from inside, these giant horrific warehouses. So, but it does speak very well to the nightmare that is animal agribusiness. Kelly, did you want to introduce Jenny?
Yes. So I know I'm the newbie to the group, and I'm so excited to be hosting my first episode. And of all topics, you know, the hidden cruelty of animal agriculture, which is obviously not a heavy topic at all, and so much that we can get into. And so honored to have Jenny McQueen joining us. So Jenny McQueen, I'm sure, needs no introduction to most of the people, if not all of the people watching the show. Jenny's a longtime vegan activist based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and a very close neighbor of me. We're like 5 minutes apart. She has led hundreds, if not thousands, of demonstrations, protests, disruptions, open rescue, and has even risked going to jail to expose the hidden cruelty of animal agriculture. Jenny and her husband, Peter, tirelessly fight for the animals with every waking hour. And she's such an inspiration for me in a pivotal part of the community. And Jenny, we're so happy to have you here. Is there anything you want to say before we jump in and choose a topic and go from there?
I thank you for that introduction. That is extremely kind. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here. It's I mean, I know all of you are activists too, and it's an honor to be amongst you. So thank you.
Great. So where to start? And we can continue talking about the viruses, but you know, what we were talking about is CAFOs, and so like that might be a good topic to just start with, like the hidden cruelty of animal agriculture, like the obvious cruelty, and that is, you know, how animals are bred to get on our plates, you know, and I don't think most people know just how, you know, where they come from. You know, we have advertisers that like give us this false impression that, you know, it's a happy cow on a field, and, you know, so that we don't think they're doing it, so that we don't think about this. And the reality is they're crammed in very small places and live very short, horrible lives. Yeah, you know, so this is our biggest challenge as vegan activists is how we expose this, you know. And one thing that we do is vigils. And has everyone here been to a vigil?
Yes, I have.
No.
So for those that are listening, a vigil is an event where we all get together, usually in front of a slaughterhouse, and we bear witness to the animals that are going into the slaughterhouse. And when, you know, it allows, we give them comfort, love, water if we can, and, you know, that's one way that we expose this industry. And as we know, again, you know, I'm kind of going back and forth, you know, we have these bills that are making it increasingly harder to expose this.
Right.
So I don't know. Yes, Helene.
I'll give you a little breather. In North Carolina, they put a law making it harder to do that exposing where you can't. But then something happened federally, I think, that made it so that that law would be overturned. And I don't remember 100% because I think it all happened over COVID time. But there used to be a lot of people that came here because we're the second largest producer of pigs in the country. And a lot of people are going undercover to expose the factory farming and the cruelty in the pig farms and the poultry farms in this state. And Mercy for Animals has done it. They've done a press conference here. A lot of people come here. Jean Bauer came here with Leilani Munter and did a mini documentary because the state has more pigs in it than people. I don't know if people realize that there's more pigs here than people on a daily basis, and what's happening to those animals and when we've had like hurricanes come through and the lagoons have overflowed because it flooded, and people don't realize like the poison that has gone into their drinking water and into the air and into their soil because what the lagoons are is just the waste that comes from the animals that have been processed with chemicals and hormones, and that's their secretions. So I don't even know what my point was, but there's just so much. There's so many things here that we can unpack. I guess we need to kind of have some direction. And Dilip is just like tickled pink in the comments. I don't know if Jenny can see them. Dilip is like, if I think if he could jump through the screen and hug you, he would.
Likewise.
Can I?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Marla, go ahead.
I was just going to mention real quick that when we're talking about food apartheid, another factor in all of this is the communities that are most at risk of environmental ramifications of these horrifying factories are primarily communities of color. The poorest people, because of white supremacy, tend to be Black and brown indigenous people, and they tend to live closest to these horrific places. So that's another example of systemic racism. But one of the things I wanted to mention to you, Jenny, is so I went vegetarian when I was 15 for the animals in the 1980s, because I didn't know anything about the dairy industry or the egg industry. There wasn't, the internet and all that. I thought that was the end of the road. I thought that was, so I was a vegetarian for 12 years until the internet came around and I was exposed to more people who, knew about these industries. So I guess a question I would have for you, and so I went, it's since 95 or 6. Anyway, my point is, how do you feel is the best way to connect the dots for someone who thinks that they're doing enough, whether they're vegetarian or quote unquote green or whatever? How do you break through to connect the dots to them?
Well, there's so much that so many different ways. I do street activism. I do online activism, and sometimes, I'll for example, do cubes of truth. And sometimes you have to see where that person is coming from. Are they more interested in the environment? Are they more interested in their own health? Or, my preference is to talk to them about the animals and about what I've seen, but that just does not connect with some people. So I think there's always going to be a variety of methods. I think documentaries are great. I think video is great. Written articles are great too. Mm-hmm. You just have to hit people again and again and again, multiple times sometimes, for it to have any effect.
And I think some flexibility with your approach, right? So if you can see you're getting nowhere with someone talking about it from a certain perspective, that maybe having some flexibility with listening. So yeah, Sangeeta, I think you're muted, but Sangeeta has something to say.
Yeah, so you mentioned several types of activism you do, Jenny. Is the in-person or street activism more effective in your opinion, or online?
Oh, the effectiveness of activism, we could have a whole other chat about that. I just tend to do all the activism I can, hoping that some of it is going to be effective. Street activism I find extremely uplifting myself, because I'm talking to people sometimes who haven't even considered animals are included in their diet if they're eating meat. Like an animal and the meat they eat is to them is an alien construct. Leafleting is great too, and an organization like Vegan Outreach will tell you that that's extremely effective. Watching videos online is great too, and I think it has to be, your own comfort level. So if you're not comfortable going out on the street and talking to people, if you want to do more online activism, I would say go for whatever is what you're most comfortable with. Teaching is fantastic. Being a lawyer is amazing. So I think we need to speak to people's skills as well in terms of what activism they're more comfortable with.
So Jenny, I have a question. When you do the the cube or anything that might play footage, hidden footage of these farms, what percentage of people do you think if you could guess, like, know what is going on, and you know, is it high, is it low, like are people genuinely like have no idea of, you know, that of the industry, and how the animals are treated, or and what is their like what it like for those that don't know, like what do they tend to like think is happening, you know?
Yeah, I'd say it's an even split, to be honest. I'm always surprised that people, we always ask the question, have you seen this footage before? How does it make you feel? And for those who've seen it before, it's slightly more difficult because you can talk them through what's happening on the video, but they've seen it before. So then you have to query how they feel about what they've seen before. Did it make you change? And here are some tools to make you change. But for those people who've not seen, for example, chicks being ground up, male chicks being ground up, they're horrified. We've had people in tears. We've had people commit to being vegan on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, I find it really powerful that I can tell them that this, sometimes it might not be Canadian footage, but because I've seen it directly myself, I'm able to say, this is Canada,
Mm-hmm.
or this is exactly what happens in Canada. I've seen it myself. And I think it's really important to connect it to your own home area.
Sure. And I think one of the things that happens is a lot of times they think it's a US problem. It's just the US. I have my European friends say that a lot. They don't realize that, while it may not be as terrible in their, there's a lot of sort of romanticizing of farming in the United States and in Europe, and I'm sure Canada. So I think that if we can disabuse people of some of the notions that they have, like I think a lot of times all it takes is someone taking a little road trip from point A to point B, and they see some cows on a pasture and they assume that that's how dairy cows live, but in the piece I posted in the comments, in the US at least, 90% of dairy cows live indoors. By living indoors, we're talking basically on wooden or cement floors that were not meant for these bodies, and the vast majority have lameness because of it. The vast majority have infections because of the forced reproduction again and again and again. And what it took for me was seeing a film that connected the dots to the dairy industry and the egg industry, and realizing that the same reasons why I went vegetarian would be why I would go vegan. And so the tremendous horrors of these industries are no less, and those animals end up getting slaughtered anyway. So, Helene, yes.
So I want to touch back on something that Jenny said. Hey, puppy. Is that why are the chicks ground up? Why are the male chicks ground up? Because there could be people watching that don't understand that. They may have just kind of glazed over what you said, because it just doesn't sound human. It doesn't sound like something we would do. And the reason why the male chicks are ground up is because it's a female industry. If we didn't eat eggs, they wouldn't have to get rid of the male chicks, because the male chicks can't lay them. So they may keep a couple, but for the most part, they sort the chicks.
Right.
They take the males. They do two things. And this is when I was an educator in the classroom. I would say, how would you want to die? Would you like to suffocate to death or be mutilated to death for the most part? And I let the kids choose, pick your poison, right? And they would just have a hard time trying to decide which one was the better way. I said, because basically they take the chicks, put them into a plastic bag, tie it up and throw it in the garbage. Or they take them, they throw them into the incinerator, and they just get ground up alive, because there's no need for the males in the industry. The cattle industry with the dairy cows, if we didn't have dairy, we wouldn't have veal, because that's what they do with the male calves in the cattle, the dairy cow industry. not the cattle, the dairy cow industry.
Mhm.
That's what happens to that's what veal is, folks. Veal is 6-month-old baby cows that are slaughtered to death and kept in little like crates, and so they don't have a lot of sun, so their meat is nice and tender, that when you have that veal parmesan, you're like, wow, this is so soft. Well, it's because they totally it's because of what they do to the baby cows that are male, because they can't produce milk. So then the other thing I want to say is with organic milk, going back to dairy cows, when I was vegetarian, I would drink organic milk thinking, well, that's better for me, right? I was like, organic milk's better. I felt better about buying organic milk and spending more money on it. And then you and then you learn that those poor cows suffer more than the non-organic cows. And why is that? Because if they get an infection, they can't give them medicine. Because if they give them medicine, they're no longer organic. So their teats will get an infection or get clogged. They just have to suffer through it. So that's what happens when people are like, well, I buy organic. Well, you suck. You should just stop eating milk or drinking milk altogether, because those poor cows are going through a more horrible existence in a terrible industry than a cow that's not organic. Who'd I see? I think Jenny. Did I see?
Yeah, the thing I say about organic is they end up at the same slaughterhouse.
Mhm.
True.
And I bear witness outside a slaughterhouse, where the cows come, and you see the udders dripping. So that's something that I can tell people directly too, when they think that, we respect cows. Yeah, hello. We don't. We send pregnant cows to slaughter, and they die an early death, whether they're organic or not.
Right, and that's a good point too, that they're pregnant, because women, how do we produce milk? Because we don't just have it. We have to have something happen to have it happen.
And that's one of the tropes that, even though we all took sex ed or whatever, we somehow believe that these udders magically produce milk. I do want to bring up a couple of little points here. One is to not forget the leather, wool, and down industries, because they are also, I think when I first went vegetarian, I also called those byproducts. It's just like, you're not gonna waste it. But in fact, they're co-products. They prop up the industry. They make the industry viable and enormously beyond cruel. But there's something like, according to an industry book I read, leather industry. Okay, first of all, it's a $2 billion industry in the United States, $93.2 billion worldwide. So it's not some little like mom and pop thing, but also the hide of the cows counts for 7.5 to 10% of their market worth. So by buying these products, you are helping to make this industry more viable, which an industry with very thin margins. The last thing I just wanted to ask Jenny, could you talk about, I don't mean to be dominating. Could you talk about the concept of forced molting? What is that? Do you guys do that in Canada?
I'm not sure if it happens in Canada, but forced molting is where the lights are turned off. You're talking about the chicken industry?
Yes. It's to encourage, I think, 1 or 2 more cycles of egg production. They're basically starved and kept in. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's just one more of the awful manipulations that animals have to endure in the chicken industry. They're one of the most abused animals, and they're just hidden behind these closed doors. People don't realize that they don't even realize that you've got separate breeds. You've got the breeds for the layer,
yes, right,
egg industry. You've got the breed for the the meat
broiler
industry. Yeah. And I think people can Google forced molting as well to see whether it what it's exactly about. but I think it's really important to say that there are alternatives. I mean, we're talking about animal farming, and alternatives do exist now.
Mhm.
So there's really no need whatsoever to consume animal flesh.
Kelly, I know you had something to say.
Yeah, I just there was like 3 topics I think I'd really love for us to touch upon, because I know we're getting close to the hour. And one of them is just like advertising, kind of like listening to all this and like tying it up as like, you know, advertising, right? Like how many billions of dollars is spent on advertising to get people to not think about this, you know, with the happy cow on all these products and this and that, right? Another thing I'd really like to talk about is egg gag bills, because I don't think people know about them. That's, you know, they're the reason why more people don't know what's going on. And I'd love to talk about open rescue, because we have Jenny, who's done multiple open rescue initiatives, and then I'd like to talk about environment. So I know we kind of quickly touched upon it, but you know, people don't know about that as well, right? So I don't know, Helene, I know you had something to say, and then maybe we can go to like the open rescue and talk about.
Oh, definitely. I just want to touch on the comments, because Dilip did bring up something that was important. Well, he brought up a whole bunch of things, but Dilip asked about Mark Powell, who is Reagan's husband. And Jenny, I'd like you to talk about Reagan for a moment, because your husband has posted that Mark attends the Toronto Pig Save vigils at the slaughterhouse in Burlington where Reagan was killed. He's determined to seek justice for her killing. So I'd love for you to touch on that, and then we can segue into the rest, because that's not my activism, but it's yours. And I'm more power to you for doing that, for going and being there with the animals before they go into slaughter. I think for me and Kimberly, I'll speak for you, it would just destroy us. I produce festivals. That's my activism, right? For somebody else, that might kill them. So please talk about Reagan and that loss of a human by a truck.
Absolutely. Regan's last post before she was killed the following day was about ag-gag laws in Canada and in Ontario, saying how evil they were. And then the very next day, this is while the ag-gag law was being introduced, she was standing at a pig vigil. She wasn't looking inside the truck. She wasn't being irresponsible. She wasn't trying to stop the truck, walking in front of it. She was targeted by a truck full of pigs outside the slaughterhouse, who ran her over, and that's as far as I'll go. It was a horrendous death, and she is extremely missed. And I'm really glad, and I think she would be too, that her name has gone around the world, and people have been taking action and starting to get active for the animals in her name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the court case is still ongoing 2 years after she was killed. And Mark Powell has stepped up. He is amazing. And he attends, like Peter said, he attends vigils. Mm-hmm. And we were at a court case just, the day before yesterday, where the driver was just given a traffic ticket. So it's extremely upsetting that justice is not being served for her death, extremely. But I did activism with Regan a few times. She was extremely brave. She was outspoken. She was beautiful. She was just the perfect individual. Mm-hmm. One time we were inside a dog sled operation, and we were, getting evidence in the daylight. It was open. The workers came and started being violent, and there was a chain around my neck that a worker was pulling. I was starting to lose consciousness, and Regan took action and basically saved me from, fainting or worse. So she was a real hero.
He got a ticket for murder.
He got a traffic ticket.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
Like I don't understand how someone dies by your truck here would be vehicular manslaughter, potentially. I mean, did you just go oops and you ran into a human being? But so I mean, I don't even understand what that ticket is. What's that ticket? What's that fine? Did you lose your license, your ability to drive that truck? I mean, somebody died. That's not I like broke your leg even. Somebody died because of your malfeasance, right? I mean, that's just, but thank you for sharing that because it's important for people to know that. Go ahead, Kelly.
I was gonna say, and to make the matters worse, like you said, someone died, and there was a like GoFundMe, and the amount of money that was raised for this driver who killed someone from the industry, from the farmers, the truck drivers, you know, because of his mental health. You know, we know that, I know Jenny and I know the story of how, you know, after Regan was killed, how negligent the police were in how they handled the sensitivity around informing her family and the support or lack of thereof the support that her family received. And the industry is worried about the mental health of this truck driver and is in rallied to like pay his salary probably for multiple years with the amount of money they raised, right? That's so messed up.
Let me give a positive story about some activism that she did. She went up to expose another dog sled business in Quebec, in Canada, about 2 years ago, just before her death. And that same dog sled business now has been closed down just very recently. And a crew of us, including Mark Powell, were up there. We had a convoy of animal rescuers, and we rescued 100 husky dogs from that operation. So Mark was there, a film crew was there, and we could feel Regan with us, basically looking down and saying, yes, there's a success story that I was involved with. You know, we're chipping away at the industries, and we're making a difference in her name.
That's awesome. I was just gonna mention, I think that part of where I think people are so divorced from the reality of what goes on behind closed doors that it's not necessarily a matter of callousness, it's just simply ignorance, and then sometimes adding to that like blissful ignorance. You know, I don't want to know. You know, I know it's not good. I want to mention just really quickly, part of, at least in the United States, I'm not sure about Canada, a part of the daily experience of these, you know, billions of animals throughout the land animals, millions, it's such a staggering number that I think people just turn off, is routine mutilation, to make them, basically these are choices for to have less loss for the production company. So like, for example, chickens, well, like turkeys have parts, you know, that chickens and turkeys might have the ends of their beaks seared off, for example, the claws removed. With cows, they might have their tails cut off because animals in stress attack each other, understandably. The reality of it is that this is routine, done to all these millions and millions and millions of animals without anesthesia, without follow-up care. This is just part of the daily life, you know. Is that the same in Canada? Do you know about mutilation, routine mutilation?
Absolutely. And I think you meant to say pigs have the tail cut off.
I think in the US too, although I might be wrong about that. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mutilation is a thing here too. I was inside a pig barn, and there's basically tails, you know, strewn across the floor after they've been cutting them off. And every time you see a rescued pig, some of the open rescue that we've done, people, it's very rare to see a pig with its tail.
Right.
People are very surprised.
I
And
meant,
sometimes it's mutilation to stop the animals from attacking each other, biting each other, because there's no enrichment inside these places. So, yeah, you go inside. One that I've been inside, there's the pigs were in like a group housing with living in a sludge of their own feces and urine. And hanging from the middle of the room is a chain, and that is the enrichment. And duck farmers. I hate the word farmer actually, because it kind of, gives that impression of, you call it green fields. This is what the industry try and say. It's more like a factory owner, isn't it? The small places are
warehouse.
Yeah. So it's just horrendous.
Right.
I know we get close to the time, and Kelly wanted to kind of touch on open rescue. Let me just give a quick premise about the open rescue and why we have our faces uncovered. I think it's good to be able to shine a light on these places. This is a huge way that we can say that we are just normal people. We're going in. We're not afraid of the law, because it's more important to shine a light inside. And if we end up in court, and if we end up getting arrested, that is actually more ammunition for the media to tell the story of the animals and to tell the story of the rescuers. So I'm all for people going inside and, faces covered and rescuing animals. Of course, that is amazing. But open rescue is this whole thing where we're trying to get publicity for the animals. We're trying to save a life, and we're trying to tell their story.
Jenny, I'm curious how you choose, or how you've chosen the places where you've gone and done open rescue. Was it because there was complaints that weren't being addressed by industry or the government, like our equivalent to, I guess it would be the
FDA. Oh no, ours is FDA. What's yours?
Like what whatever our equivalent is, like, or
USDA.
USDA,
might be
sorry.
the easiest to do it. I'm just curious how you chose the places where you've done it.
Well, seriously, I mean, the first place that I did open rescue at, that was just us touring the Canadian countryside and stopping at each of these locations, and it was random. And what we find inside is just typical of any place in Canada or the United States. Or, to be honest, let's be honest, in the UK, people think that, the country that I come from is idyllic for animals, and that we're way forward in our thinking. And, what Marla was saying earlier, people think that, it's other countries have great practices. But I think we can expose, awful animal cruelty wherever we go.
Marla, I know you had your hand up earlier. Oh, Sangeeta, sorry. Yeah, Marlon and Sangeeta.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say I did mean dairy cows. They do have their tails docked routinely, as do other animals that get flies on them, and it is routine, it is normal, and it is absolutely, as we can imagine, it must be excruciating. So
thank you for clarifying that. That's terrible.
Sangeeta, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I don't do vigils or any kind of in-person activism, but I also find that if I post too much about veganism on my wall or on my social media, then people just tune me out. So I have figured out a way to covertly send that message. Like, if you are currently following my Facebook page, I am talking about a book I'm reading. And this is a great explorer from India. He did amazing things exploring lost books, ancient lost books. He traveled to Tibet, sneaked into Tibet when he wasn't allowed, and did all sorts of adventures. So I got people hooked onto that story. And then whenever I find some connection in his story, like he talks endlessly about eating all sorts of meat like chicken and mutton, but then his health is really bad. So I covertly made that connection about his diet. And also one time when he saw cows suffering, it really affected him. But he didn't change his eating habit, or he didn't make that connection at all. So I wrote about that. And so people are reading the story about life story of this really interesting person, and then in that I have this message about veganism here and there. And I think I am priming more people that way than if I was writing direct posts about veganism. That's my opinion, but you could say that that's not effective. That's possible, but that's what I'm doing.
I think stories are something that really captivate people. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Sangeeta. We should be trying to use stories more and more. You know, I'm thinking of what stories I can tell from all my years of activism, trying to captivate people, but using another author and another person to tell the stories and try and encourage people. I think that's amazing.
Right. I mean, the book has really nothing to do with veganism, but when a vegan reads a book, we have that eye or ear or whatever you want to say, that we can immediately find some bits and pieces here that we can use to help people make that connection. And I think that I am priming a lot of people by doing that.
That's awesome. Kimberly.
So I've kind of been doing the same thing, and I've noticed even more so lately of this planting seeds. And I've been participating in a blog challenge where I had to write 30 blogs in the 30 days of April. And I started touching on veganism, and then I started talking about other things. And then as I went into Earth Week and I posted about the environment, and people have been really open to like reading more. And I'm getting like, thank you for posting this. I'd never considered this before. I hadn't thought about that. You've opened my eyes. This is incredible. And I share my story every chance I get because we want people to feel a personal connection. And storytelling, that's my activism. I love to speak, I love to write, and so storytelling is how I do it. And it's been very exciting to see over the course of this month, especially, these little seeds that are getting planted, hopefully growing new vegans.
Yeah, April is a great time to do that. I was just going to say one little comment, observation, I guess, is, you know, I've been an activist for a long time. I've done like virtually everything from, you know, creating recipes to getting arrested. So I've got that whole range of things that you can do. But so the point is, I think that sometimes other activists kind of look down on the activism of one another, and they say that's ineffective, or that's, you know, you're too, it's like both sides of the extreme. One is, if you're too blunt and too direct, you're ineffective. And if you're kind of trying to find this, you know, way around through the side door, then you're an apologist. So I think the point is, we don't sit there taking pot shots at each other. We do what we know, what we do best. And for some of us, it's a variety of things. For myself, I feel incredibly grateful that every week I'm going to create a new recipe that's free for the public, that's easy and accessible, and, you know, write essays. For Helene, she's you know, running 70,000 veg fests, give or take a few, in all these different countries. So like countries, all these different states. But the point is just like, if you're sitting back and taking stock in somebody else's activism, there's something wrong with your activism. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
Those of us who are busy doing the work aren't doing that. You know what I mean, Jenny? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm very thankful for everyone who does whatever activism they're comfortable with. And especially now for the scientists and for the workers who are developing, you know, like cell culture meat. and all these alternative foods that we can be eating, and chefs who are coming up with delicious ways to present vegan foods. So absolutely, I'd say please don't be critical of another person's activism.
Kelly.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we're trying to expose this industry. Everyone's going to wake up in a different way, which is why all the activism is necessary. And if you don't like we're saying, if you don't like a certain activism, just do what works for you, right? Because we're not all, this one way it's going to work, right? So Sangeeta and then Helene, and we're probably, I want to talk about climate, but maybe that could be a whole other topic.
I think that's
right, in of itself. So Sangeeta and then Helene.
You're on mute, love.
Coming from India, I have to focus on this fact that there is no separation between dairy industry and meat industry. And so when I was reading this book, which was written exactly 100 years ago, and this ferocious carnivore, he one time sees these over 50 cows being walked by the owner from the big city into a town, because those cows got pregnant and they would not lactate, obviously, because they were pregnant. And so he goes on and on about how these cows are killed and butchered without ever making a connection. That's what he's eating, and I hope that I help a lot of people make that connection, that if this was happening 100 years ago, it has not gotten better. It has only gotten worse since that point.
That's a good point. I feel, going back to what Marla was saying about the activism, we are stronger together than we are if we were broken apart. And the problem within the vegan movement, and pretty much any movement, to be honest, either Republicans, the Democrats, the Trumpisms, the QAnon, they all have the same problems, is that they become factions, and then they infight, and then they point fingers, and they say, what you're doing is ineffective, what I'm doing is more effective, so why are you doing that? Well, there's activism I wouldn't do, but I'm happy that those people are. What I feel about it doesn't matter. What they feel about it does. But you know what? If it leads to somebody making the connection, then it was effective. And we all need to support that, because the animals don't care what kind of activism we do. And the planet doesn't care what kind of activism we do. But we need to do that activism, because that's where it will matter for the animals. That's where it will matter for the planet. And, your health, well, you control what you put into your body. We can just tell you what makes the most sense. So for, that piece of the three-pronged thing that veganism pretty much encapsulates. So yeah, climate. It needs to be juicy, and we should dedicate a whole show to it, because it is the least cared about part of veganism by vegans and by everybody on this planet that is watching it get warmer and everything around them become really strange weather-wise. They see it, they're living it, they're complaining they're hot, they're complaining about floods and fires and hurricanes and tornadoes. And there's pieces of the news starting to say why, but they're still not making the connection with the animal ag. They're just not making the connection, and that connection needs to be made. And I saw Jenny with her pen.
Sorry, it's not going to be connected to what you just said, but I should give a little plug to people who can follow hashtag #PigTrial4, where we've just had a judge rule that we're guilty, and also follow Meet the Victims. Meet the Victims Canada has got a lot of people on trial in Canada, and Meet the Victims 1 and Meet the Victims 2. So there's a lot of criminal trials happening in Canada. I just want to give a plug to, if people are interested, to follow those.
No, that's fine. This is a plug show. Everything that we all do, we try to plug and support and honor that. So yeah, so I guess we'll figure out what we're gonna do. We were gonna try to bring Celeste on, right?
Yeah.
For climate, because gosh, he's so good. And he's got great stories. But that connection with Animal Ag, it's to not say something about it. We should say something about it. We know now because the number one cause of climate change, people, is animal agriculture. Believe it or not, it is. And
honestly, that's a different conversation for a different day, but I don't know if it matters.
I know, but I mean, it is, when it comes to animal ag, it is the number one destruction of our planet.
Yeah.
And we would be remiss to not mention that, and how important that factor is for animal agriculture, and how it impacts every single person who could possibly watch this and listen to this life, and the future lives. If you have children and grandchildren, they may not have a planet to live on because of what's happening now, let alone the pandemics that can come from animal ag that could kill us there. So I don't know, at this point with COVID and everything that's happened with that, and I guess unless people are literally bloodied from the nose and dying in the streets and becoming zombies, I don't know if that would make people realize
even then
what the truth is.
Even then.
Right. What has to actually happen, because you're not, I mean, we've seen it. Who hasn't had someone impacted by COVID, right? So you see it. Who hasn't had somebody impacted by eating animal products or eating animals? Because that's heart disease, diabetes, strokes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, cancer. Who hasn't been impacted by that? Yet who hasn't had cancer and then gone home and continued to eat the same diet, or had lung cancer and continued to smoke? If that's who we're trying to get through to, we're in like major trouble.
We have to help people make connection. That's the best we can do.
Yep.
Yes, and I think that you have to be a little bit cautious in your language, don't you? Because if you're trying to tell people it's the number one cause, then I'm not sure that that's the best thing to do. I generally say it's a huge contributor to greenhouse gases, because people are all about, well, what about fossil fuel use as well? So I tend to be a little bit cautious in my language, and I always go to the individual. And the individual animal. I don't think people take in mentally when you tell them like billions of animals are killed. That doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Whereas if you kind of work it into a story, I met a pig the other day. I saw a pig with blue eyes. Who are you eating? How did she live? That's my method.
Yeah. And that's really important. You said, how did she live? And this is something that I want every vegan that's watching this, and for you to tell every vegan that is that the cows and the pigs and the chickens and the ducks and any sentient being on this planet is a he or she. Well, humans, whatever. So the pigs, we'll just go with the animals are male and female, because I can't say that about humans anymore, which is okay. But when we speak about the cow, it's he or she. Right. The pig, it's he or she. And it makes people stop and think, because they think of it, they, them, possessive, a possession, as opposed to a sentient, living, feeling being. And when you say he and she, it gives ownership to that animal as being a sentient being.
Individuals, yeah.
An individual. And they are individuals because they are males and females.
Yeah.
And we need to use our language. That little word of changing it to he and she can change the whole conversation of how it's received, even if you don't know, because the person in their head is thinking he or she. That's it. No, it's not an it. It is a he or she. Yes. And then when you go to eat, it's he or she on your plate. And you don't know if it was a he or she. But you know what? No matter what, it was a he or she that's on your plate. Good,
I just want to squeeze something in before and we need to, I think what people don't realize, I mean, we're talking about the hidden cruelty of animal agriculture. People don't realize how much money is put into hiding this, hiding the cruelty, hiding the environmental, hiding the, like, just everything, right? So just letting people, like, just know about the fact that there's so much money, and so, like, why don't they know about it? And then they question it because they want to create this doubt. And when there's doubt, whether it be the environment, the cruelty, the whatever, like, you were saying, oh, it's just one bad farm, or it's just one bad company, like, then if once that doubt is there, then people will just be like, well, I don't know who to trust, and so I'm just going to continue with my habits, right? And I don't like people just don't think about how big the animal agriculture industry is and how much influence they have on the government. So it's such a monumental feat that we have, we're trying to demolish.
And there's two countries represented in this conversation. We have the United States and Canada. And as much as we are so close and similar, they are definitely two distinct countries and rules and laws and livelihood. And that's just two countries here in this conversation. But this animal ag issue is all over the world. It's not just here. Now, Europe has done a better job of recognizing animals than the United States and Canada have. They are a little more advanced in how they're going about their factory farming and producing animals for your palate.
No, I disagree with that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I mean, I come from the UK, and just check out organizations like Viva. They've gone undercover and found horrendous conditions inside, pig factories too.
Right.
So, it's a see that, one country is better than another. You will find horror stories in any country you visit when it comes to animals who are deemed food.
I agree. And I think that romanticizing of animal husbandry in some of, especially it seems like in some of the European countries where people, well, it's not like the US, or in India, the notion too that the cows are deified and treated with the utmost respect. Everyone has their conceits about how they get around this conundrum, and as to Kelly's point about the obfuscation of these industries, just using the word harvest as opposed to slaughter is very intentional, and it's funny because they will fight us tooth and nail over the use of terms like milk or butter, but then they want to use terms like harvest rather than killing or slaughter. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. But are we at time?
We passed.
Right, Sangeeta, does anyone else want to say anything?
Oh, we could probably talk about it for another
I know
5 hours.
We can go all night. But Kelly, do you want anything to say?
I want to say thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you for having me. It's been really enjoyable.
Yeah, no, really, this was a great
We'd
idea.
love to have you back.
I know, maybe every Wednesday. So you never know. Let us know what you think. All right, so I'm gonna put.
I was going to end it with a quote of Paul
it.
McCartney: "If slaughterhouses had glass walls, we'd all be vegetarian and vegan." And I think that's really the moral of the story, which is why they hide it. They're doing such a good job to hide this cruelty from us.
Yeah, it's a great quote. Okay, I'm gonna close this out. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Marla. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Sangeeta. So everyone, thank you once again for watching the Vegan Stew. We will be back next No, 2 weeks, because next week is the first Wednesday of the month. First Wednesday of the month is Coach Kayla at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, so you can tune in for some health and nutrition conversation with her, because you can only catch her once monthly. And then we'll be back the week after that, which is 5/11. And it's going to be a really fun one, much lighter than this show, because it's favorite kitchen implements. And we have a special guest for that too, and that will be Kathy Hester, who is in our community here in Raleigh, Durham. And actually, today's her birthday. So I get to say happy birthday, Kathy. We look forward to having you on the show, because between Kathy and I, we probably have every kitchen implement that you can possibly think of. And she's going to do show and tell. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you like to cook and you like to have stuff to cook with, or you want to know like what's the best way to use these kitchen implements, that's the show for you to watch. So we'll see you on 5/11 for that one. And once again, you can go to virtualvegfestlive.com to enter our contest and win the 8 prize packs. And thank you to Terracy for sponsoring this month's Virtual Veg Fest Live. We really appreciate all our sponsors. And we want you to be kind to one another. You never know where somebody's at, or where they've been, or what their day has been like, or even their month has been like. Sometimes it gets a bit rough. And I was screaming on Monday, screaming at the top of my lungs inside my house. So you just never know what's going to happen or where somebody's been. And because of that, be kind, because like I said, not every day is bad for everyone, but there are bad days, and people are human and they're not perfect all the time. So remember that when it comes to being in relationships and friendships and business and personal, because you can't cast stones, because I'm sure that you've probably been a shit towards somebody in your life. And if somebody's shitty towards you one day, maybe kind of try and figure out why. Maybe it's behavior that you're doing, and maybe they're just not having a good day. So once again, be kind. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Tune into Coach Kayla. Do some yoga on Tuesdays and Thursdays on Virtual Veg Fest Live. And of course, tune in on Monday to see Kimberly with Fireside Chat with Kimberly at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. She's got a great show. And Dawn's event in Greenville, South Carolina. Susan will be there. She's watching. We'll be there. If you happen to be there, please let us know. And we'd love to see you. Other than that, have a great night. Thanks so much.